Okay, today we're going to go over the maintenance and adjustment of a model year 14 600C John Deere corn head. We're going to start off with the divider points. To raise the divider points up, you just raise it all the way up until it clicks. It latches in up here. Down here we've got a stop for the divider point. You can change your stop position by simply pulling out a pin right here. And you can also level each point individually by there's a bolt with a jam nut here to level each one individually. Now to get the divider point the rest of the way up into the service position, you've got a bar here that you're going to reach underneath and grab with both hands and pull out. And when you raise it up, there is a cylinder that helps in lifting this, but you might want to hang on to it so it doesn't flip over backwards or anything. You don't have a latch or anything on the model year 14s. On the previous model years, you did have a kickstand you had to take out of here and put in a holder. But with the newer models, they do have a shock now, so you don't have to do that. Going on to the row unit gear case, the model years 13 and 14 they've now gone to 80-90 gear oil in the gearboxes. Previous models used corn head grease. The procedure for checking them, though, is exactly the same. You're supposed to run the head for approximately 5 to 10 minutes to warm up the gear cases. You need to raise the head all the way up, and you unscrew this pipe plug up here, and it has a dipstick on it. And on the dipstick is two lines. The lower line is your add mark, and on the gear oil from the lower line to the upper line is a half a quart, and on the previous models with corn head grease, from the lower mark to the upper mark is going to be 1 tube of grease. Just basically run it, warm it up, raise it all the way up, unscrew that, and see where you're at, and add it accordingly. For the ones that have grease, you have a grease fitting right here in between your left hand chain. That's where you put the grease into the corn head, or into the row unit gear case.
I wanted to talk to you about some of the adjustments on the row unit. And the first thing we want to go over is the deck plates. So what you want to do first is close them all the way up and then go along and measure your gap. And what you want is 11/16 on the front and 3/4 on the rear. And the reason why we're a little wider on the rear is to let trash flow through there easier. So after you get them slid in, you measure them, and you need to move one. You want to move the stationary knife, which is on the right side, right here. The left one is your hydraulic, and it's not adjustable, so you want to adjust the stationary knife. In order to do that, what you do is loosen your 3 bolts, and then you can slide this in and out until you get your 11/16 in the front and your 3/4 in the rear. So on your gathering chains, to adjust them, what I like to do first is pull on them a few times and make sure it slides free in here. And then you want to adjust these to 3/16 between your spacer and your washer, and that's the 3/16 gap there. And in order to do that, you loosen your jam nut, and then you turn your bolt head until you get that measurement. On your top sprockets, you can swap them side to side. You know, as you notice that you're getting some wear in there, they will swap side to side. On your front sprockets, you notice there's no grease zerd anymore for your bearing, and you can also swap them side to side, or you can flip them over.
Okay, to bring the divider points back down out of the service position, you simply grab a hold of them and pull them down. As you pull them all the way down, as they get all the way down, you'll hear them latch. That latches the inner divider point in. Then you pull up on the little L-handled latch here to get your outer divider point down. You set it all the way down onto the stop, and that puts it back in the field operating position. Okay, model year 13 and 14, the header height sensors have been revised. You no longer have to lock them up when you put them on the header trailer. There's no pin here to lock. The reason for that is they've now created a spring-loaded system in here to where they're spring-loaded in both directions, so they won't be damaged. On previous models, you had to be careful to raise the head far enough up off the ground to where the sensors didn't catch, because then you would cause some damage up here at the sensors. With this model, you don't have to worry about that with the spring-loaded part of it.
So we want to adjust the auger drive chain. So what you do first is take your 4 bolts out and remove your shield, and then loosen your 2 bolts here. This is your guide to slide down, and you tap it down until you get a 3/8 deflection in the chain, and then you tighten your hardware back up, put your shield back on, and then put your bolts back in to hold your shield.
Okay, on the 608C corn head, on the only grease fitting on any of the drive shafts is one here that greases your telescoping fitting. It should be greased every 50 hours, and I would probably give it 2 to 3 pumps of grease. There is no grease fittings on either one of the U-joints on either end of the drive shaft, so the only fitting here is the one for the telescoping. You have to line up your shields in order to access that fitting.
I was going to talk to you about the clean out doors on each end of your corn head, but since I'm going to be underneath the head, first thing we want to do is put down our safety stop. So anytime you're underneath this corn head working, you want to be sure this safety stop is down. Now on your clean out doors, like I said, you have one on each end of your corn head, and to release them, you just pull the pin and let them fall. You can clean stuff out. On your previous models, you had to be careful because they didn't have this bolt that held these in. They just would come right out. So if you left them hanging down, you'd lose them going down the road on your trailer. So in order to put that back up, you just raise it up, hold your pin, let them snap back in.
Okay, your auger height position can be changed. On each end, you have a plate here with 4 bolts. You can loosen the 4 bolts and slide this auger up in a slot, or you can, there's another set of holes here, you can take the bolts out and move it up to another set of holes. The majority of the time they're shipped in the lower holes, and that is usually adequate for most of your crops. The only time you might want to raise it up is if you're getting some damage and stuff for like food grade corn or whatnot. If you wanted to raise that auger up, sometimes raising the auger up makes the crop feed a little different and cause less damage in there. But for the majority of the time, you're going to want to leave it down. Also too, if you do change this adjustment, you are going to have to readjust your auger drive chain and make sure it is properly tensioned after you make your adjustments. Make sure you make both adjustments on the left side and the right side the same, and don't have your auger on an angle. Okay, underneath the 600C corn heads, you have a slip clutch down here that does require to be greased. The grease intervals on this are 200 hours. You want to grease it about 10 pumps every 200 hours. And you'll notice that there are 4 grease certs all the way around this slip clutch. You only need to grease one of them. The only reason that there's 4 of them is just so no matter where the shaft is stopped, you have access to a grease fitting. Okay, your oil bath drain on these corn heads is right here. There's a drain plug right here that you have to pull out. And after you pull the drain plug out, you're going to want to let the head down in order to bring all the oil to the front of that gear case and let it drain out into a pan. Okay, the oil bath case on the 600C heads, in order to check the oil level, you put the corn head down into the operating position as it is, and you pull this little plug out here, and you should have a little bit of oil running out of there. The gear case on these takes 80-90 gear oil. It's something that we would recommend that if you check at the beginning of the season, and you really shouldn't have to check it again unless you notice some leaks either around here or around your cover. If you do need to add oil to it, you can take this cover off and dump oil in through that hole. Again, it's just an 80-90 gear oil, and the capacity on it is approximately 1 quart. Okay, all 600C corn heads have outer gathering point extensions that can just raise up, pull them up, and the little pin comes out and set them back down. If you don't want them up, you can raise it back up, push in on the pin, and let them back down. Put them back in the storage position.
You have these ear savers that's located on your snouts, and what they help in is to keep the ear inside your corn head. So what you want to do is check them, make sure both bolts are in and they're not cracking in there, and so they'll slip out and you'll lose them. So on your stripper plates for your auger, what you want to do is go along and loosen each of your bolts and then adjust it till it's 1/4 inch. So you'd measure it on each of your flighting so it's even, and then tighten your hardware back up. So you want a 1/4 inch gap between your stripper plate and your flight.
That concludes our demonstration of maintenance and adjustments on the 600C corn heads. For further information and more detail on everything that we've talked about, please consult your operator's manual.